Well, hi, everybody, and welcome to NAUI's Dive Team Report. I'm your host, Greg Martin. You know, we've talked before about the really interesting jobs that are a part of the dive industry. And sometimes that diving career can be an augmentation of another full-time job as well. Regina Bier is a police officer in Ohio who is also a diver, and maybe I should say she's a diver who's also a police officer. I don't know. She's also a member of the Women Divers Hall of Fame. Gina, thanks for joining us here on the podcast.
Well, I'm very glad to be here. Thank you for calling to talk to me.
Well, absolutely. Now, let me ask you the hardest question of the day. Were you a diver or a police officer first?
I was a diver. Dive instructor before I even became a police officer.
What drove you into being a diver first and then on into being law enforcement?
Well, my interest in diving actually started way back when I was a little girl because my father, he dove back in the late 50s into the 60s. And though I never went with him diving anywhere because by the time he started having us kids, he had stopped diving, he always had his gear hanging in the garage. And so as a little kid, I'd go in there and I was always fascinated by the equipment. And then he would talk stories about diving. So that really sparked my interest way, way back. So then when I got into college, I saw that it was in the curriculum in the phys ed department. So I went ahead and jumped on board at that time.
Kind of interesting that someplace like Wright State University in Ohio would offer a scuba diving course, but that happens a lot, I guess, in landlocked places.
We were very, very fortunate because Dan Orr, he actually started the Wright State University scuba program. And the program just hit 42 years old, anniversary, whatever. I was lucky enough to be able to literally be trained by the best right at the beginning. And I stayed with the program all the way through my instructors with him. I was lucky to get a good, solid start right at the beginning from, I consider him the best trainer out there, but I'm biased.
Well, and anybody that doesn't know who Dan Orr is, if you're familiar with the Divers Alert Network, Dan was instrumental in that program for a great many years, still is very active in that program, and still very much a part of the dive industry these days. So you feel like you got some really good instruction, and then did that then parlay into the law enforcement?
The funny thing is, when I did my training with Dan, he kind of opened the door on, I guess you'd call it self-confidence through college. And I graduated with a degree in anthropology and archaeology. I wasn't the best student in the world to go on for my master's or PhD. So I had always had an interest in law enforcement, but I didn't go into law enforcement until I hit 25 years of service this May. I just went into it because I needed a job. It was an interest that I had forever, but I didn't have the confidence to do it until, I was probably about 25, 26 years old.
So how does diving fit in with the day job?
Well, I do law enforcement during the day, and I teach scuba diving usually about 2 nights a week. So for literally I've been a dive instructor for 28 years now, but a cop for 25, but I've always just juggled the 2 jobs. And it takes a lot of time sacrifice to keep them both going.
25 years in law enforcement is a good long time, and congratulations on that. I think that's awesome. 28 years being a dive instructor is probably more awesome because of all the people that you've had a chance to impact all those years. In 2011, if I'm correct, you were inducted into the Women Divers Hall of Fame. How do you feel about that?
I was floored when I got the phone call that the ladies that wanted to nominated me because, to tell you the truth, I look at the roster of women. When they brought it up, I was like, holy cow, I'm not the caliber that these women are. And I'm like, yeah, I'm a police officer and I'm a dive instructor. I do run the university program now, the one that Dan Orr started. But I guess I've just always done both for so long and given it the commitment that it takes that I just didn't really think, I don't want to say that much of what I did. I knew it was hard work, but I mean, I was just honored and floored when I received the phone call, and then even more floored when I was accepted. I mean, I feel very, very honored to be in that league of women. And one lady did tell me, when I told her, I said, well, why me? She said, the work that I've done doing forensic diving and evidence diving, you really were kind of a pioneer because that long ago, really that many women weren't doing that.
Talk a little bit about being a woman in the diving industry.
Being even a female in both arenas, where when you're the one in the class, you're like maybe 2 women out of 20 guys. At the police department, I was in my academy class, there were 2 women and 18 men. I just recently attended a class, there was 150 people in law enforcement, and only 10 of us were women. Same with diving. I mean, you go and you know you're going to be maybe 1 or 2 or 3 women in a large group of men. And both of them, you learn to get pretty thick-skinned on certain things. But my dad raised me from a little girl. He goes, if you're going to get through life, you better have some thick skin. When I go places, I don't look at myself as a woman amongst a bunch of men. I look at myself as I'm here and I'm a diver. But the other thing I found was a commitment I made when I became an instructor in diving, and especially knowing that I was going to teach college kids predominantly. I made a personal commitment to myself and both professions to stay in top-notch shape, keep my physical and mental health very good so I could be a role model and not just, somebody that's coming in and thinking they can do it. I'm pretty proud of at the age that I am at 52 that I'm still holding my own pretty daggone good. So that's a good thing.
All I can say is congratulations on all those aspects. I mean, first off, being a woman as a police officer, I know is an extraordinarily hard thing. Being a dive instructor, that's fabulous. And of course, it sounds like you were a shoe-in for the Women Divers Hall of Fame. So I say congratulations on that.
Well, I appreciate that. Very, very nice to say. My mom says you need to give yourself more credit, but I'll just keep working and let other people notice my work.
There you go. There you go. And listen, if you have an interest in getting into diving and you're a young woman, by all means, jump in. Find a local NAUI shop. And I think the NAUI part, Gina, is equally important. We didn't really talk about that, but I think the NAUI part is very important, don't you?
Oh, absolutely. I'll tell you, I probably lead NAUI.
Well, again, congratulations, and just keep bleeding NAUI, I guess. We appreciate you joining us for the podcast today, Gina.
Well, thank you very much for having me. I appreciate it.
Be sure and check out NAUI.org or your local NAUI dive shop. And that's this episode of NAUI's Dive Team Report. I'm Greg Martin. Thanks for listening. I'll see you underwater.